comes to us from the biological anthropologist Helen Fisher. Oh, love. The philosopher Miguel de Unamuno said, "El amor es hijo de la ilusión y padre de la desilusión." Love is the child of illusion and the parent of disillusion. That's pretty extreme, but it is baffling sometimes, isn't it? Accordingly, scientists have come up with some very peculiar ways of trying to study love. Reviewing the results of their research, you get the feeling a lot of studies begin with a scientist asking the question, "What's wrong with me?" And so we get studies confirming, for example, that romantic obsession is biologically based and not a sign of insanity. Some studies suggest love is more like an addiction than an emotion. For instance, neuroscientists at Emory University discovered that when two people bond, it triggers the same brain reward circuits that are responsible for addiction to drugs like cocaine and heroin. Sheesh. Other studies seem to be bent on trying not to take love or failure at it personally. These always seem to presume that the primary purpose of love is reproduction. Taking an evolutionary approach, they try to explain love in terms of its utility for successfully producing offspring. And so we get bizarre studies, like the one conducted at the University of Bern in Switzerland, where women, or human females, as the aloof researchers referred to them, were asked to smell T-shirts worn by anonymous men and then pick which ones appealed to them. The researchers, who must have been cold that day without their undershirts, discovered that time and again, women chose the ones worn by men with a safely different MHC, which is a genetic compound that can cause pregnancy loss if the parents are too similar. And researchers concluded, if the smell of MHC isn't a deal maker or a deal breaker, the taste might be. Saliva also contains the compound, a fact that one scientist believes may partly explain the custom of kissing, especially when it doesn't lead to anything else. It's a taste test. So even if you make it to first base before you get rejected, it still might not be your fault. I can't imagine how they carried out the kissing half of that study, scientifically speaking, I mean. Most of the studies being done about love seem to focus on romantic love, by which scientists actually seem to mean mating, and they try to explain it in terms of biological processes. And sure enough, they find some. But of course, one of the problems with conflating romantic love and reproduction, and one of the ways that that conflation reinforces itself, is that studies about romantic love are almost exclusively limited to heterosexuals. If you assume that romantic love is for the purpose of reproduction, it excludes same-gender couples. But some of the most beautiful romantic relationships I've ever seen have been between people of the same gender. That's worth studying and describing too. The challenge in separating love and reproduction is that the larger category of love is hard to define and explain. We know we need it, and we see it all around us. Religions have been promoting it for thousands of years, but we're hard-pressed to tell each other what the heck it is. Mating is observable, while love is confusing and unpredictable. Romantic love, as messy as it is, lends itself much better to scientific study than the kind of love we express when we exchange Valentines with a stranger, or when we say, "Love your neighbor as yourself." In the 1950s, the paleontologist Pierre Teilhard de Chardin tried to take a wider view. His approach was part physics, part philosophy. "Considered in its full biological reality," he wrote, "love, that is to say, the affinity of being with being, is not peculiar to humankind. It is a general property of all life. In mammals," he explained, "it's easily recognizable. As you move to simpler life forms, it may not be as obvious." But he argued that what is present in the most complex life forms must also be present in the tiny molecule, Because we are made up of molecules. Everything is. Everything is made up of cells, which are made up of molecules, which are in turn made up of atoms. And atoms are made up of, well, mostly space. Physicists aren't sure what else. When I was a kid, we drew pictures of an atom as a nucleus with electrons circling around it like a miniature solar system. Now there are other theories about atoms that are harder to sketch, but what still seems to be true is that when you get down to it, everything is made up of a lot more space than you would realize. Fascinating, yes? And Teilhard de Chardin is arguing that we are drawn to each other in love for the same reason that atoms and molecules and the world hold together at all, instead of just dissipating. The charge that holds atoms together is the same thing that brings people together. Love is the essence of all matter, he's saying. Now, other scientists have criticized Teilhard de Chardin for being too quick to extend scientific terms metaphorically. And they're right, in my opinion. The task of science is to explain things. Science offers information. The task of religion is to interpret things. Religion offers meaning. When religion tries to explain things, like how the world was created, for example, and people mistake it for information, it makes religion look foolish. When science tries to go beyond information to interpretation, that can also be risky. For example, at times the theory of the survival of the fittest has been used to excuse human oppression and ignore poverty. We can still see some evidence of that in world politics. Good religion is open to scientific discovery, and it holds it in the light of the spiritual meaning-making we've inherited from the past. What would love have us do with this information, it asks. Teilhard de Chardin's work may not be solid science, but it is definitely a beautiful piece of religious interpretation. Drawn by the forces of love, he wrote, the fragments of the world seek each other so that the world may come into being. He was a poet. The fragments of the world seek each other so that the world may come into being. I feel the truth of his vision on a heart level. Not necessarily a rational level, but a heart level. The heart knows that all things are interconnected, and the heart feels that longing for connection, that draw between apparently distinct beings or things. The heart is where we feel love. Have you ever really noticed that? That you feel love happening in your heart in the same way that you feel thinking taking place in your brain? To say that the heart knows something is not a metaphor. The Upanishads, the sacred texts of the Vedantic tradition in India, contain remarkable images of the heart. The physical image of the heart in this ancient text is remarkable for its accuracy. Drawing on knowledge more than 4,000 years old, it describes blood flowing from the body into the heart, through the lungs, and then back into the body. The heart is called Hridayam, which means brings, gives, goes. But the text also describes the heart in non-literal terms, non-physical terms, saying that within the heart is a house in the shape of a lotus. And within the lotus is that which is to be sought after, inquired, and realized. The text is so specific with the little house shaped like a lotus, but then the thing inside the house is very vague, just that which is to be sought after, inquired, and realized. What does that mean? Later, the text explains that what's inside the little house in the heart is the immortal self, with a capital S, which is, it says, like a flame without smoke. Flame without smoke. Sounds a lot like the image of a burning bush that is not consumed. Remember that from the Hebrew Bible? There's a lot of cross-pollination in ancient religions. The Upanishads goes on to say that this flame is the light that remains even when the sun and the moon are out of sight. It's what we might call the spark of the divine within each person. But according to the ancient text, this light within us is not just a little spark that has flowed into us from the source of all life. It's also something that flows out from us, enveloping the whole universe. It flows into and through and out of us, brings, gives, goes. The heart is our link to something larger than ourselves. Some call it light or spirit of life. Some call it love. And some, saying that God is love, call it God. Here at church, we dedicate ourselves to deepening in relationship with that larger reality known by so many names. If you drop by campus almost any time during the week, you'll find something happening here. You might see a meditation session underway with people sitting together in silence, breathing and centering and turning their attention to the present, to essence. Or you might see a group of pagans conducting a full moon rite in ritual and chant. You might catch the band rehearsing here in the sanctuary with Abe on the new electronic drum set. Or you might see the choir lifting their voices together with Alan conducting. Across the courtyard, you could find a pranic healing group practicing the balance of prana, or life force, or a Tai Chi group. A yoga class meets here with people stretching their bodies and their hearts. There's a Buddhist study group. Artists gather to paint side by side. Gardeners tend to the wildlife habitat. There are covenant groups, A Course in Miracles, and a weekly potluck. And this week, as I left the church after dark one evening, I saw such a lovely thing. A group of people in the light inside the social hall, holding hands and gently folk dancing. Is there any other place anywhere besides a Unitarian Universalist church where you could imagine all of these spiritual practices taking place under the same roof? You might not have been thinking of folk dancing as spiritual, but it's definitely good for the heart. There are lots of ways to be spiritual, to nurture the love within you. Some people do it through silence and turning inward. Others through music, maybe loud music with a drum beat and bold vocals, or maybe classical music with a piano and many voices blending in harmony, or maybe music like Randy's, which defies those two categories and is enchanting. You may have noticed that we're experimenting with music in worship lately, looking for the right balance. Other people turn to rituals involving the moon cycles and the earth, and coming to church on Sunday is yet another spiritual practice. It's good to have more than one. That's all fine and good, you may be thinking, but what about social justice? Isn't that an expression of love? Absolutely. If you drop by campus during the week, you can see that too. You might see our after-school tutoring program in action, or the economic reform group, or animal advocates. Every Wednesday, volunteers give out bags of free food to about 60 people. EarthWeb leads us in caring for our planet. We've got teams working on immigration justice. There's a lot happening around here. And in fact, if you come this Friday evening, February 17th, you'll see the Celebrate Justice auction happening. You'll see our auctioneers, Arnie Gullerud and Nell Sale, making everybody laugh. They're quite funny. And you'll see beautiful and interesting items up for sale, as well as homemade dinners and professional services, and even a sermon title. That's right. You can buy the right to choose a title for one of Christine's future sermons. If you were a trickster, you might give it a title like My Most Embarrassing Moment, or The Tao of Mel Gibson. Don't tell her I suggested that. Of course, she's crafty and she might find an angle that you don't expect. So I hope you'll come on Friday. And that's at what time, Liz? 5:30 p.m. It's 5:30 to 8:30. With childcare, she says. Love is the spirit of this church and service is its law. Those two things have to go hand in hand. Michael Eric Dyson says, justice is what love sounds like when it speaks in public. Putting love into practice like that is essential. And yet, in order to practice love in the wider world, we have to nurture it within ourselves. I think we've all met people who tried to work tirelessly for a better world, but without nurturing their own spirits enough, without any balancing practice of joyful love. What happens? They get cranky, right? They get bitter, maybe even judgmental or self-righteous. If it's a really bad case, their unhappiness might even discourage other people from getting involved. And really, this can happen to any of us in any area of our lives, not just social justice. If you find yourself caught up in bitterness, cynicism, or self-righteousness when dealing with other people or your work or in your family, you probably need to tend to your heart, to nourish that larger spirit of love that is connected with who you are as a human being who has a heart and who is heart as well as mind. Let's go back to romantic relationships for a minute, and not just those, but any loving, intimate relationship between two people. Not all of us are involved in romances, but I hope all of us are involved in some kind of loving relationship. Love between two people is also definitely a spiritual thing. Whether it's between parent and child, siblings, friends, neighbors, or lovers, but it's not always easy. Love is comforting, nurturing, and uplifting, but it can also be challenging, humbling, and it can bring us to our knees. If you've really lived, then you know that it is all of those things. Loving makes us terribly vulnerable to loss. Intimacy shines a bright light on our shortcomings as well as our strengths. When you come into this church, you enter into a place where the connection between your own heart and the heart of the world may be deepened, so that you can love better, more fully. And this is a place where, whether love has you on top of the world or on your knees, you can count on being beloved to us just because of that light within you. We're glad you're here.
These words of wisdom are gathered in one of the books of the Bible called Tobit. Give alms from your possessions to all who practice righteousness, and don't resent the gift when you make it. Don't turn your face away from anyone who is poor, and the abundance of the universe will not turn away from you. If you have many possessions, make your gift from them in proportion. If you have little, don't be afraid to give according to what you have. Give some of your food to the hungry and some of your clothing to the naked. Give all your surplus to charity, and never let your eye begrudge your offering. And while the ushers are taking the offering, Angela and I will be handing out the Valentines.